In this lab, we're going to practice how to separate this single monolith service into microservices. So before that, if we check the code generated from this model and move on to this monolith code family and check the source, there are this order and inventory from this model aggregate. And if you move on to POM file, it has all the informations about how this application is constructed and all the related libraries and dependencies, such as the Spring Boot version and Spring Cloud Stream and REST repository, HTOS, and Fine Client, and so on. So if you checked all this code, let's just move on to Gitpod IDE. And when this pop-up comes up, you have to install this language support for Java. I'll install it and it would reload the page. When it's done, I'll just leave only one terminal and open another terminal from Kafka folder and put in this command docker compose up. This command helps us to run the Kafka service, and while it's installing, I'll move on to the main terminal and install a HTTP tool. So this is the command to install the tool. Installation completed, and let's wait until every download for Kafka server is completed. So our Kafka server is now running on port number 1992. And then our next step is to open another terminal from Monolith and put in the command maven spring boot run to run the Spring service. And our monolith service is now running on port number 8081. And after that, you can check what is on the monolith system by putting in this command on main terminal. Just clear it and put in this comment we have copied from our instruction. And then there are some informations of inventories and orders which are included in our monolith service. And if you want more specific informations, then you can just put in inventories or orders to get their own specific informations, like this profile and order, profile inventories. And before we move on to the next step, I'll just separate this browser to watch the instruction easier, like this. And then we will find the file called order.java from monolith. So get into the source, main, Java, and domain. There are some files over here, and here's order.java. And as you can see on the right, we have a same code that has been described on the instruction. So our next step is to put in the red circle, which is breakpoints, on the inventory service on line 42. So if you want to make a breakpoint, just place your cursor on the left side of the line number and click it. Then the red circle comes out, which is a debug point. And then to get access to the debug mode, we have to kill this monolith service that we have run before. So Control C on the monolith terminal, and then our next step is to move on to monolith application, the Java file. And as you can see, there is a debug button over here. So I'll click it. And then the Spring server is coming up with debug mode. Now the server is up. And our next step is to make an order. So I'll clear this terminal and put in some inventory by this command like this, ID number 1 and maybe stock of 100. And then let's make an order by this command, orders product ID number 1, and let's make an order of 3 quantities. And then here comes the breakpoint we have set, and here's a remote controller for debugging. It continues the work, or step over to the next one, step into the function and out of the function, or restart it and stop it. So we'll just continue this one. And before that, we have the local information of inventory service. If you open it, there is a proxy information. And then I'll just continue the system. And our order has been made. So this is the way to use the debug point. You can just put in the debug point on anywhere and you can check how the functions or objects are working in the system. And as we have seen on the terminal over here, our order has been placed well after we have continued the system to work from the debug point of inventory service. So we can check that this inventory service has been called well in the system. Our next step is to separate this monolith service into microservices. So to edit this model, we have to fork it and make it your own project. And now this model has came into my database, so I can edit this model. So I'll just resize this bounded context monolith and place another one over here. And to get this objects inside this bounded context, we have to move this a little bit. And I'll name it inventory. And our next step is to put in another command sticker over here and name it decrease stock. And then I'll check this extend verb to make it to have the attribute information. I'll put quantity for the information, which is a data type of integer like this. And then we have to connect this order placed event to decrease stock command. So this line means the request and response connection between event and command. So when the order placed event has been published, it recasts the action of decreasing the stock information. So it is connected by this line. And now let's check the code preview to see how the code has been changed. But as you can see, there are no changes on the codes. So we will move on to our main page by opening another tab and go to mine. And then there would be a fourth model which has been saved on the database. And then you click the code preview from here. And then here comes the inventory and monolith folder coming from the model we modified. And if you look at the specifications for the source, in the domain folder, there were order and inventory related files in this monolith service, but it is now separated into inventory. So when you go to domain folder of inventory, there are some inventory.java file repository and this decrease stock command coming from the command we have added. So with this code, we will push it to Git and create the repository by this button. If you have already got the repository name of Lepcha monolith, then you can just put in number after it, so there are no wrong works on the GitHub. In my case, there are no repositories, so I'll just create it. So it is done, and I'll open a GitHub IDE. And now I'll just close all these welcome pages and ignore all these notifications. So our installation is done for running the Kafka server on port number 1992. And then our next step is to check and implement the codes from the calling side. So I'll move on to order.java file. And I'll just separate this browser and replace it like this. Move on to post persistent code. And as you can see over here, there are the same code coming from here, but it has got one more line over here. So I'll just copy this and paste it underneath decrease stock command like this. So our next step is to move on to next instruction, and we'll check the stub codes from the find client, which is placed on external package from monolith. So move on to the IDE and check the external folder and check all these codes. Decrease stock command, inventory service. And when you move on to inventory service, you can check the find client existing on the code as it is placed on the instruction. And then there is a put method to make the request to the system and make a work for decreasing the stock as order has been placed. And then our next step is to check the code from inventory controller, the Java file. So I'll find the inventory controller.java, and let's check if it is the same as which is described on the instruction. From this line number 16, we have this code, inventory controller, and I think it is the same code. So we have checked it all the way through, and let's move on to inventory.java file, which is from inventory. And there is a decrease stock code, which is not finished. So I'll put some methods coming in by copying this code over here, like this. And then our next step is to run both services like we always did. Open terminal from inventory and monolith. And then type in Maven Spring Boot run. And then I'll copy this to use it on inventory as well. Now it's downloading the Maven libraries to run the Spring service. And now our service is running on the port number 8081 and 8082. And then let's move on to the new terminal and check if we got the HTTP tool. Install it once again, and now it is here. Clear this terminal, and then copy this first command to register the product. So the stock has the amount of 10, and then we'll make a put method by decreasing the stock of quantity of 3. So now the stock of product ID number 1 is 7 because we have decreased the stock by 3. And then let's check what is left on the inventory. So it has 7 stock left. And now is our time to make an order from the monolith service. So copy this command and paste it here. So we have ordered 5 quantity of products, which is ID number 1. So it means our left stock must be 2 of them because we have decreased 5 stocks by ordering them. Check it, and you can see there are only 2 stock left. So in this lab, we learned how to make this monolith service into the microservices. We have separated them, and we have made it work on the system by putting in some decreasing the stock code on the method for the persist code, and we have changed and we have checked the find clients coming from inventory service to request the decrease stock command. So this lab is done for now.